Pensions is for all, and all have been urged over the years to plan for our retirement. The regulator in the sector, the National Pensions Regulatory Authority, has been busy over the years, in the last 13 years at least, supervising the area and regulatory net. They've introduced a number of new things, and together with the State Secretariat on Economic Affairs, they've introduced new stuff. They call something RBS, risk-based, whatever. We are here today to speak to the Chief Executive of the National Pensions Regulatory Authority, Mr. Hayford Atta Krufi, to find out what the NPRA has been doing all this while. Welcome to Graphic Online, Chief.
Thank you very much.
It's been a while.
It's been a while, yeah, and it's always a privilege to talk to Graphic Online.
Yes. We want to find out how is the sector like, and what are some of the new things you are doing. We hear you are doing something with the State Secretariat on Economic Affairs. What is it all about?
Thank you very much. First of all, NPRA is very grateful to the Swiss government for the support that it has given the authority over the years. In fact, it goes way back to about 2013 when the Swiss government, through its State Secretariat for Economic Affairs, which is SECO for short, they've been providing support for NPRA. We call them Phase 1 and Phase 2. The support has come in two phases. The 2013 one ended in 2017, and then we started a new phase in 2019, which we have just ended as at the 31st of May this year. And the second phase has come in the form of technical assistance. They are in three main components. The first one is to strengthen NPRA's management and governance.
Okay, so that's what the support is all about.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Strengthening
NPRA's management and governance. That's the first component.
Okay.
And then the second component is also strengthening NPRA's supervisory or monitoring oversight of the industry.
Okay.
And then there's a third component, which is also enhancing our outreach and what we refer to as education and sensitization. So generally, these are the three main areas that they have been supporting NPRA. Yeah.
So that's what SECO did?
Yeah, that's what SECO did. And within these three components, there are specific projects that they actually undertook. For example, they train our board, they train our management to see how we can have synergy between the two bodies, because the board is for the long-term strategic oversight of NPRA, whilst management is on the day-to-day administration to see how the two can work together. And then in terms of the monitoring and the oversight, we have, and in your intro, you made mention of the risk-based supervision framework, which we are introducing, and they provided us with a lot of technical assistance in deploying that, and also with the IT infrastructure that the whole framework is going to sit on. They provided a lot of support for us in those areas too. Yeah.
So this support, how is it going to help the NPRA in your operations?
Yeah. Of course, it is technical assistance. So it is not physical money that they were putting into NPRA. NPRA funds its own activities, through our own internally generated fund. But of course, the SECO uses consultants from various jurisdictions where pensions have got some kind of in-depth, establishment there. And these are the consultants who come in here to train ourselves, to beef up our human resource capacity, to be able to hold our own hands and then sustain these projects, in the coming years. So that is a kind of form that the support has provided us. And indeed, it has given us a grounding for us to be able to sustain these infrastructure in future. Yeah.
Okay. So apart from this circle support, will you be looking elsewhere for another kind of support?
Well, help is always good, but ultimately, NPRA should be able to sustain itself in the long run. We've been here for 13 years. Of course, from 2013, when we were really, really young, they came in to support us. And of course, some of the things that they had provided for us needed to be embedded, and that's why they came in the second time.
Yeah.
Of course, you cannot ask them to come the third time or fourth time or go to any other donor, institution. What NPRA needs to do is to be able to take advantage of the capacity that has been built so that they can sustain themselves. So I don't, of course, when help comes, we will take it. But I also don't want us to live on some kind of a handout or expectations that we will always go for support. So we have built enough capacity to be able to sustain ourselves going.
We know the NPRA has been around for 13 years, from 2010 up till now. Let's look at the asset under your management. How does the growth of pensions in Ghana look like?
It's looking very positive. Assets have grown astronomically. From 2012, I would say, when we started, taking the statistics of pension, it was quite small. But as at the end of the last quarter of 2013, pension funds had grown to 50.8 billion Ghana cedis. And this 50.8 billion is made up of 13.3 from the public sector, which is SNET. From the SNET scheme has asset, or the SNET fund is 13.3 billion. And then the private pension funds, that is what we refer to as tier 2 and tier 3, is 37.5 billion. So when you put that together, that's where the 50.8 is coming from. Of course, this is not being audited. As at the end of last year, 2022, it was 46 billion. So that definitely is how the asset is growing. So if you look at 46 billion in December 2022, and you look at April 2023, and it's gone to 50 billion, you begin to see the rate at which it's growing. And it's very, very important that these monies are used to support the economy of Ghana.
Looking at the current challenges in the economy, people are concerned about investments and all other things. I mean, the ordinary people, the young ones may be questioning, or those who are even nearing retirement may be wondering that our pensions safe? Our pension investments, are they safe?
Right. Our pension system is very solid. The 3-tier pension system is very long lasting, is copper bottomed, is very solid. Investment, well, there is no such thing in finance that in investment is safe. Investment is about fair and best returns that you want to get for contributors. And of course, the finance people will tell you that you have to diversify your investment in order to make it relatively safer, because there's a saying that you don't put all your eggs in one basket. Okay, so if you ask me whether investments are safe, I would say relatively, but it is giving fair returns and it is diversified enough. And what investment advisors or trustees do is to make sure that they get the best returns for contributors.
How about inflation? Are you considering allocating the investments in such a way that inflation does not really affect it?
Yeah, well, of course, you are always keeping an eye on the microeconomic indicators of a country, exchange rate, inflation, the basic rates, policy rates. All those things play a key role in pensions, because at the end of the day, when the contributor goes on retirement and they are paid their benefit, they are going to compete with income earners in the society. So you look at your investment, and that is why, for example, in the social security world, we have what we call indexation, where you look at wage inflation and you look at price inflation, and every year you add to pension payouts so that it will be a little bit above, or it's not consumed by inflation. So we do indexation so that we'll be able to monitor how inflation is eating up pensions. Yeah. Yes, but so we are quite concerned about that. But in terms of returns, we also look at the average rate that, for example, Treasury bill is giving out, and you invest in such a way that you are able to get at least the Treasury bill rate, or Treasury bill plus a certain number of so that you always be above.
So what is the NPRA doing by way of ensuring prudent growth in the sector in terms of investments?
NPRA has what we call the investment guideline. Of course, the way we monitor and regulate the industry is through guidelines, because we have the law, which is Act 76, the National Pensions Act, and then we also have regulations, which is the LR 1990. Okay. But underneath these legislative documents, we also have our own guidelines, which break down the law and then the regulation. And one of our guidelines is a guideline on the investment of pension funds. And within the guideline, we have to make sure that we diversify pension assets as much as possible, so that the trustees will have a choice as to which instruments they want to invest in. So we have Government of Ghana securities, for example, bonds and bills, and treasury bills and so on and so. And then we have local government bonds, and then we have corporate bonds, and then we have the money market, which is the fixed deposits, and then we also have what we call the collective investment schemes, and then the alternatives. So we make provision for all these asset classes and give them to the industry and say, look, this is your guideline, and there are certain limits. You cannot exceed those limits. We call them per issuer limits, so that you cannot put all your investment in one basket, in one bond, like basket like that. So that is how we have been monitoring investment, and also making sure that it is within the limits that we have set, the per usual limits.
Okay.
Of course, it's 100%, but you have to put a certain percentage across all the 7 areas that we've given to the industry.
Let's talk about national development. What in particular is the NPRA doing with our pensions to support national development, or what can be done with our pensions to support our national development?
See, that is the ultimate aim. Some people can invest pension funds for up to 45 years before they go on retirement to claim it. So within the 45 years, what do you do with the money? Of course, you are investing it so as to ensure their retirement income security. But whilst the money is being invested, in which areas? And that is where Ghana government becomes our real main investor, put it that way, in that instance. So Ghana government borrows that money for national development.
Okay.
Companies borrow that money to expand their businesses. Banks borrow that money to lend out to their customers so that they can also get interests. Asset managers who run unit funds, unit trusts, and mutual funds, they also borrow the money. And then in area of real estate, Ghana always has deficit in housing. So real estate developers also borrow the money. So in all these institutions, including government borrowing the money, they turn the money around for national development. Pension funds are very, very patient. When you borrow pension funds, you can hold it for a very, very long time to use it for national development, so that you also pay by way of coupons or interest back into the fund, so that when people retire, there is always cash or near cash for them to access to look after their as retirement income. So that is how pension funds go around. And in most developed countries, it is pension funds that keep the economy running. Exactly. I mean, in Europe, for example, after the Second World War, when their cities and countries collapsed, it was pension funds that they used to rebuild. And that is how pension funds have supported. And in Ghana too, talking about this 50.8 billion, these are monies that the whole nation can always have access to for national development.
It's good you mentioned the Europe example of how pension funds have been used to turn their economies around. Maybe is it because they have more people in the formal sector? Because it brings us to our side. We realize that the informal sector has been problematic over the years. Pensions considerations or investment in that sector is very low, and it's been low over the years. There are some attempts by the NPRA to increase it. How does the informal sector look like now?
Ghanaian economy, like most, I would say even all African economies, tend to be very informal based. And you're right, in Europe, in Americas, and in developed economies, there's a bigger formal sector. And therefore, the income that comes from formal sector always, is prime in running the economy. But here, majority of our people are in the informal sector. I think statistically, we have about 11 million Ghanaians who are as adults working. And out of the 11 million, only 2.5 are in the formal sector. So we're talking about roughly about 9 million in the informal sector. Now, they don't have regular incomes. Some incomes are also not determinable, and they don't earn regular remuneration put their way for the work that they do, and therefore it is always very difficult to bring them into the pension bracket. And
so what are some of the challenges in bringing them to the bracket?
First of all, the formal economy is not big enough, and naturally we are a nation, I will say we're a nation of shopkeepers. People like to work for themselves. People like to work for themselves. And so the more people work for themselves, the larger your informal sector becomes. And people who work for themselves also are very, very difficult to reach in terms of pension coverage. And also, mind you, the pension system we have in Ghana makes it mandatory only for the formal sector. And the informal sector, which has got a majority, we've talked about 9 million, voluntary. There is no sense of compulsion in them to join any pension scheme. So there has to be a lot of moral suasion on these people. We have to nudge them. There has to be the work of corporate trustees. It has to be the work of the regulator. There has to be the work of the national media, like you are, because it becomes a whole national exercise. And also the perception that pension is for white collar job people, blue collar job people. Pension is not for me. Pension, I mean, you can see the sign behind me that says a pension for all. And that is what we've been doing lately, trying to get people move away from that perception that pension is only for the formal sector. So all these are, I would say, impediments to the expansion of pension to the informal sector. And that is why there has been over-reliance on the formal sector when it comes to pension. Yeah.
So in the face of these challenges, what in particular is the NPRA doing to overcome these challenges and then increase coverage in the informal sector?
Yeah. At the top of our conversation, I talked about the SECO support, and one of the areas has been to enhance outreach. Yeah. Because it's been seen and as one of the biggest challenges that we are over the 13 years. NPRA has done a lot. My corporate affairs unit, they've been across the entire country. We have also set up satellite offices across the country, all with the aim of bringing pensions to the doorsteps of the people who really matter. We have offices in Tamale, we are in Sunyani, we are in Kumasi, we are in Koforidua, we are in Tema, Takoradi, and plans are afoot to go to whole Cape Coast, and we want to reach out, and that's what NPRA has been doing, taking pensions away from Accra to all the regions in the country. Our aim, and if you look at section 14 or so of our law, we are enjoined to be in all regions and even in all districts. So my board have been encouraging management to look at ways that we can spread ourselves out across the country. So yes, opening offices across the country has been one of the things that we've been doing. And then the corporate affairs unit has been reaching out to other areas where we are physically not present. So we've been to Volta region, we've been to Western North region. These are places that we are currently, we don't have offices. So we go there for education and sensitization. Every market that we can reach, we undertake what we call market activation. We set up pension clinics where people can walk to our stalls and then ask any questions that they have. Just recently, we were in Central region, we went to Cape Coast, we went to Mankasim, we went to Swedru. We've just returned from Asasewa, and then Oti region, Dambai. So yes, we are reaching out as far as we can, and we are not doing this thing alone. We are working with the corporate trustees, who are actually mandated to manage the pension fund. So we work with them, and of course, my minister, we fall under the Ministry of Labor and Employment Relations, now the Ministry of Pensions as well. And the Labor Minister or the Pensions Minister has also been very instrumental. Some of these journeys that we take and sensitization activities, he personally leads in that exercise. So it's been good, but there is still a lot more for us to do. Yeah.
Okay. Can we talk about another difficult area, old age poverty? I mean, just this morning I was speaking with a colleague who had to take care of the parents' medical bills, the father's medical bills and all that. It's been a norm with us, like as Ghanaians, our parents take care of us, and that when they are old, the reverse is done. Yeah. I mean, what can we do to reverse this old age poverty in our country?
It's a major problem, because, for example, we talked about the 9 million who are in the informal sector, who are currently not majority of them, I would say, not sign up to any pension scheme, either personal pension scheme or group personal pension scheme. And these are people who are going to grow old and become poor because they don't have any income. Of course, if their children, as you rightly said, are not looking after them, then naturally they're going to be impoverished. So it is a major problem for us. And then the government will have to come in with policies like the livelihood empowerment against poverty, which itself may not be enough to reach out for them. So we have to start the education very early, and that has been some of the things that we have been talking about, like planning your retirement, joining a scheme, and not relying on your children, because in the developed world, that is not a culture, and that is how old age poverty has been averted. People earn and then put something aside so that when they retire, they can rely on it. But of course, here there has to be more education, because that is the only way that we can reverse the old age poverty. There isn't any particular solution to that other than the education that we have to give to people, that whatever you do, there are certain certainties in life. We're all going to die, which is certain. And if you don't die before you go, you get older, then you're going to retire. These are all natural, certainties. So it has become quite foremost in the messaging that we take around the whole country, that we need to plan, we need to put something aside because we are going to retire. And even if the unfortunate thing happens, like for example, if there is invalidity, or death, the contribution you have made has not come to waste. The moment you become invalid, then your contribution kicks in. That is what is going to look after you for the rest of your life. And even, God forbid, if you pass on, your survivors are also entitled to benefit from your contribution. So this has been the center of our messaging that we take across the country.
Let's go a bit back. We hear about corporate trustees and then pension fund managers. What are the difference?
Right, yeah. Corporate trustees are companies that have been set up by the Office of Registrar of Companies.
Okay.
With a name, they are limited by trust. See how companies are limited by, the different forms, pension funds companies are limited by trust. And they have been licensed by NPRA to manage pension funds. So corporate trustees are companies limited by trust.
Okay.
And then they've been licensed by NPRA to manage pension funds. Now, pension fund managers, they existed before corporate trustees came into existence. Okay. They existed. They are asset managers, or people we refer to as investment advisors in pensions. They advise the trustees. They advise the corporate trustees. They advise the individual trustees. They are also, so they are service providers who are hired by the schemes to advise them on asset management, on investments. So if you want to purchase, say, Government of Ghana bonds or any corporate bonds or anything, they will give you the advice in terms of value, in terms of viability, in terms of coupon payments, and so on and so forth. So fund managers are advisors, whereas corporate trustees are the managers. It can be a bit confusing. It can be a bit confusing. But if you're in pensions, it's quite straightforward. The pension fund managers themselves manage what we call the collective investment schemes, which are mainly the mutual funds and the unit trusts. So they, when it comes to that collective investment scheme, they are managers of those, but those are not pension funds. Those are investment funds, okay? But when it comes to pension fund itself, the managers of pension funds are the corporate trustees.
Okay. And are the corporate trustees doing anything to help increase the coverage?
Yes, I would say they're doing their best under the circumstance. Of course, there's a lot more for us to do. In the same way as NPRA, our work is cut out for us as far as reaching out to the Ghanaian populace is concerned. There is a lot more. Currently, we have 25 corporate trustees who have our licenses, but their presence tends to be stronger here in Accra. You know, as you go further out the country, their numbers thin down, and you are the manager. So if you're not closer to the people, they are not naturally going to, you know, join your schemes. Of course, I mean, when it comes to tier 2, which is mandatory, well, that one you can be in Accra, and anybody anywhere, you know, working will have to join because it's mandatory. SNIT, which itself is a corporate trustee, they manage tier 1. So, and that is also mandatory. But even SNIT is everywhere. They have satellite offices right across the country. Even though it's mandatory, they do their best to reach out to the entire country. So we always tell our corporate trustees, you cannot be a manager of a scheme that is taking 5% of people's monthly contributions or monthly salaries, or a manager of voluntary schemes and stay in Accra. Because the majority of the 9.9 million we're talking about are out there in the country. So there's a lot more that the corporate trustees need to do. And we've been nudging them. And very soon it is going to be a renewal requirement that, look, if you don't get closer to the people, we might not renew your license, because you can only stay in Accra. There are people out there in the four corners of our country who need to join pension schemes. And therefore, you need to get closer to them. So yes, to come back to the question, they're doing what they can, but they need to do more.
Okay.
Yeah, to show more presence across the country.
So SNIT is a corporate trustee?
It is. I call them corporate trustee, but they are not licensed by NPRA. They are set up under Act 76 to manage Tier 1, which is the basic National Social Security scheme. But yes, but it's along the lines of how corporate trustees run Tier 2 and Tier 3. SNIT also runs Tier 1. Yeah, but they don't have a license that NPRA gives to these corporate trustees, but they are set up under the law. Yeah.
Any message for the public out there wanting to understand what pensions are really about and what the NPRA has been doing?
I think first and foremost, we would want Ghanaians to understand that pensions is not for the formal sector. Pensions is for all. And there are certain certainties in life that all of us are going to face. Retirement one day or death one day. And these certainties are staring us in the face. And the only way we can prepare ourselves adequately towards these are putting something aside when we are capable or have the ability to earn income. If we don't do this, and then it comes to a point where one of these certainties kick in, then there is going to be difficult either for ourselves or our survivors. So I will entreat all Ghanaians to make sure that they join a pension scheme one way or the other. Even if you are in the formal sector, your Tier 1 and Tier 2 may not be enough for you when you retire. And that is the reason why the Tier 3 has been introduced as a top-up to your Tier 1 and Tier 2. So those who are in the formal sector, don't just rely on your Tier 1 and Tier 2, but make sure that you join a Tier 3 scheme. If you are a worker and your employer is also very keen and good and in setting up a Provident Fund scheme, please make sure that you join the Provident Fund scheme. And those who are in the informal sector, please, pension is for all. You can walk to any corporate trustee's office. You can walk to any SNIT office and say that I work for myself. I am a self-employed person and I would like to join a pension scheme. These corporate trustees, or SNIT for that matter, will be able to enroll you so that one day when the certainties kick in, you will have a retirement income security.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hayford Atakrufi, for speaking to Graphic Online. We will come again.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you, viewers. Thanks for being with us at Graphic Online.
For more news, please visit our website, graphic.com.gh, or follow us on Facebook at Daily Graphic and on YouTube and Twitter at GraphicGH.
Subscribe now.